Hello and welcome to Research Bites, your dose of science news. Today, the 5th of June, marks the World Environment Day. Since 1974, every year, this day is observed to encourage the worldwide awareness and action to protect our environment. A theme is picked to highlight a pressing concern for our environment, and this year, it is beating air pollution. In India, the state of air quality is grim, and most cities have hazardous levels of pollutants in the air we breathe in. Statistics show that India has 14 of the 15 most polluted cities in the world. But all's not lost yet, provided we act now. What are some of the reasons behind the deteriorating air quality, and what can we, as citizens, do about them? The Research Matters team spoke to three scientists who are actively exploring these aspects. In this conversation, Professor S.K. Satheesh, Professor A.R. Ravishankara, and Professor Navakanta Bhat share their thoughts about what motivated them to take up the cause of air pollution in their research. A complete coverage of their work on this regard is published today as an article on Research Matters. Please do visit our website to give it a read. Professor S.K. Satheesh is a professor at the Center for Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences and the director of the Vecha Center for Climate Change at the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. His research involves understanding the role of black carbon aerosols, the tiny particles that are released during combustion, in air pollution. Professor, could you please tell us what got you interested in atmospheric studies?
I am born and brought up in a small rural area, village only. So there was no clear directions up to 10th standard and all. So we didn't know which direction to go. So we have tried for all kinds of areas. But then by the time I reached bachelor's degree level and master's degree level, I had an opportunity to work on high frequency radars which can study ionosphere, Earth's ionosphere. So that had a lot of application in microwave communication. So I understood that this particular study has a lot of application for humankind. Until then, I was actually master's in physics with electronics specialization. I wanted to become an electronics engineer, specifically in optical communication. And because of this project I have done on Earth's ionosphere, I got interested in any research which can impact on society. So that is how I got interested in climate science, because climate science has a lot of potential for society, because this is only probably the most important problem we are facing. So then I got opportunity to work with Indian Space Research Organization, and then my direction has completely got changed into climate science.
Well, now we know these pollutants are the reason behind our deteriorating air quality. But how much is too much, and how do we measure them? We asked another expert, Professor Navakanta Bhat. He is a professor at the Center for Nanoscience and Engineering in Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, and works on developing sensors for monitoring air quality. Professor Bhat, it is often said that seeing is believing, and your work helps us to see the levels of all these pollutants in the air. How did you get interested in working on sensors and air quality monitoring?
I was always interested in science during my school years. The passion for science came just because of the upbringing that we had. My father was a civil engineer, but he was well read, not just on science, but also literature and so on and so forth. For instance, he had created the map of the sky, sort of indicating which star is in which location, how do planets come at different instances of time. That was a big passion for us doing stargazing while growing up. So that really attracted me towards science in the very first place. And then I was really interested in physics. Right, I really wanted to be a physicist during my school years. But during my high school, right, for the first time, I had an opportunity to see a tape recorder. A lot of people today don't even understand what a tape recorder is. This was early 80s or late 70s, right? I mean, tape recorder was a technology marvel at that time. And I could see that is an amazing technology. And this, comes under what is generally now called electronics. And I could also see that there is a very good linkage of physics and electronics, right? Passion for physics and attraction towards these gadgets, such as tape recorder, propelled me to pursue my career in electronics, right? So that is how I chose to do my engineering in electronics. But later on, I sort of realized that, if you really want to do a cutting edge engineering, you can't really separate science and engineering, right? If you want to today build a state of the art chip, you cannot do unless you know very well what is called a semiconductor physics. So that is how I could sort of crisscross between engineering and science, the physics, semiconductor physics, and actually building things which are electronic gadgets. So that sort of led me to really specialize in this field of making chips, right? Because you look at any electronic gadget today, they're all fueled by these electronic chips, right? This is how I sort of got into the field of electronics. But about 2 decades ago, in the year 2000, when I joined Indian Institute of Science as a faculty, I was sort of trying to define what should be my future research. Because until then, I had learned the tricks of the trade to make the chip, how to miniaturize the transistor, and so on and so forth. And at that time, it became very clear to me that over the next couple of decades, this was back in 2000, that in addition to building more powerful compute and storage engines, we should also start building what we called at that time ambient intelligence devices, which is sensors. And we can perhaps leverage the same semiconductor technology and venture into newer applications such as building sensors, right? So that is how I got into the area of sensors. Then I had to pick which areas of sensors, there's so many sensors that you can build, right? That is when I decided to pick two areas. One of them is healthcare and the other one is air quality. Because that time it was very clear that these two areas are strongly coupled to each other. Hence, we started building or starting to do our research to develop sensors for healthcare applications as well as sensors for air quality as well as hazardous gas detection. We have also been doing sensors, to detect hazardous gas leakage as well, for instance.
Apart from developing sensors, what are some of your other interests?
I have a lot of other interests, but I wish I had more free time to pursue those. I like to read creative literature, novels, for instance, and of course, poetry also. I've read quite a bit, not so much English literature, but Kannada literature. Of course, I've also read in English works of Steinbeck, right? I don't know whether people recognize it. He was one of the older generation author, John Steinbeck, right? So literature is one of my passion. I also write, but again, unfortunately, I don't get a lot of time to write articles. I had written, for example, about 10 years ago, I had written an article for, this Navakarnataka publication has this magazine called Hosatu. So written an article for them in Kannada on nanotechnology, for instance, right? So things like that. That is one passion that I have. Unfortunately, I don't get a lot of time to pursue that these days. The other thing, of course, is listening to music, classical music, and light classical music. That is something that I really like. And the third thing, of course, is I really like wilderness. The context of world environment, I think is very, very appropriate to appreciate that. I do like to, walk in wilderness, and whenever there's an opportunity to do trekking. Last week, we were in Dharmashala, so we just did a trek to a place called Trine, which is about 14-kilometer trek. So that is something that I really love to do.
While researchers like Professor Bhat and Professor Satheesh toil to help us get a better picture towards understanding what's happening to our atmosphere and climate because of air pollution, that's not enough. We need to also understand how do we take all the science behind this and turn it into policies, right? These policies can then ensure that the atmosphere of our planet doesn't take a nosedive. To get a glimpse on that, we spoke to Professor A.R. Ravishankara, who sits on different international committees working towards mitigating air pollution and climate change. He is a professor in the departments of chemistry and atmospheric science at Colorado State University, United States of America. He has been involved in understanding the chemical changes in the atmosphere, such as the ozone layer depletion. Professor, what is your role in the United Nations Environment Program?
I am involved in a few different aspects of the United Nations Environment Program. For many years, I was one of the co-chairs that assesses the state of the ozone layer every 4 years. In fact, it was mandated by the Montreal Protocol that we should do this assessment. And I left that position after I left NOAA. It requires a lot of resources, and when I moved to the university, that was not feasible. So anyway, I'm done. I rotated off of that one, but I'm still a chair, something called the Vienna Convention Trust Fund, which is Montreal Protocol came out of the Vienna Convention. And Vienna Convention set up a trust fund to develop scientific expertise and like capacity building and also making scientific measurements. So there's a certain amount of money. So we call for proposals and we evaluate what is needed and we kind of allocate that money. So I still take part in the ozone assessments and that. In addition, there is another component which is called Climate Clean Air Coalition. This is a coalition of the willing, which has a whole bunch of countries and a few other organizations and even states who want to take actions to curb climate change, which simultaneously helps some other important issues such as air quality. So I'm on the science advisory panel for Climate Clean Air Coalition. So those are the things I do with the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program.
What has it been like to work with international committees on making global policies for climate change?
There's kind of a couple of things I learned. First, policy needs to be based on good science, and good science requires, paying attention to what's being done and really carefully assessing what the collective body of information tells us. You just can't make policy based on one paper where somebody said such and such. You can't make policy based on everybody's new paper, Think about it and assess it. Second, it has also made it very clear to me that science is a key input to policy, but it's only one of the inputs. There are so many other factors one has to take into account to make policy. So from my perspective, just because I'm a scientist, I don't think I could tell exactly how they should make policy. I can inform what the science tells them. I mean, somebody has to make a decision about economics, equity, social values, and all sorts of stuff. And I don't think just because I'm a scientist, I'm qualified to talk about it. I'm just like any other human being. I could have opinions, but that's all they are. I don't envy the position of the policymakers because they actually have to consider all of these factors and base their decision on what's best, considering all the inputs. But again, I would assert that it has to be based on good science. Otherwise, it will be useless policy. That's what I stick to.
Now, there's a lot of information going around about the research on climate change. But how do our scientists communicate what they do to a non specialist audience? Professor Bhat says,
There are multiple outreach programs that we have been running. One is sensitization. There, what we have been doing is running a program called Indian Nano Users Program, wherein we have been sensitizing students who are in this area. We are bringing them over and telling them what nanotechnology can do for building such sensors, so they can also take up their career to innovate such sensors, for instance. Because we try to go out and visit some colleges and tell them what is important. And for instance, every year There is Bangalore Science Forum. We have been also participating. For example, on 3rd of July, I'll be giving a lecture in that Bangalore Science Forum, which is open to public, right? Anybody can come and sort of listen to the lectures, right?
Adding to this, Professor Ravi remarks,
I do some outreach in terms of writing clearly and succinctly if possible. And also I give talks to public. In fact, I'm organizing a meeting in France right now on June 28th, which is called Climate Change, Air Quality and Health, Long-Term Plans and Near-Term Actions. Actually, it's trying to interface the policymakers of the Loire Valley, all the cities in this region, their policies with the scientific community. Professor Molina, who's a Nobel laureate in chemistry, coming to give a keynote talk, and some extremely good other people in health, economics, atmospheric science, and policy coming to discuss the issues that how to use the science for making policy. I do this kinds of stuff. I used to be focused only on my science. Older I got, more I kind of came to the conclusion that I need to do something to take our science to the people who use it. So yes, in addition to doing science, I do spend a certain amount of time trying to communicate science.
air pollution has many sources: emissions from industries, vehicles, crop burning, and many more. Professor Satheesh, what do you think we as responsible citizens can do to reduce the impact?
Yeah, there are several things we can do, but anything we can do to reduce or avoid emissions, not only black carbon, any other greenhouse gases, will be helpful. Public transport system is one example. If everybody is using metro trains, then there will be a reduction of emissions, definitely. And instead of using motor vehicles, we can walk. And one important thing I always tell my colleagues and my staff in our center is that I have noticed that this lights and fans are always on. We don't use air conditioners, but lights and fans are on when they are not in room or they are even going out for half day. So I insist that it should be off. And solar heaters, and if possible we can plant trees, or switching to electric vehicles will also can create a lot of reduction. Transition to electric vehicle is the most important thing, I believe in that, because vehicular emission is one of the most important sources of black carbon. Specifically in cities, it is not only applicable for Bangalore, any city in India or abroad we take, vehicular emissions contribute substantial amount of black carbon. So that is one important thing, transition to electric vehicles.
Citizen science initiatives help to create awareness and get everyone to play their part. With technologies like sensors, measurement of ambient air quality is easy peasy. So let's ask Professor Bhat, the man behind this innovation, about some of the initiatives in this regard.
The way I see this technology coming, I think, will be in a few waves, if you will, right? Wherein it is still not on a scale where it can be put on cell phone, but still you can have a small mobile device, for instance, which you can deploy in few locations in a city, or a mobile device, not a cell phone, but still a mobile device which a citizen can carry with them and can actually sort of map the air quality while they're moving around. That I would imagine will be the first wave, so that those who can actually afford to get such a device, or even at the city level, city administrators can decide that they want to deploy this device in very important traffic intersections, and which can be Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled, and anybody who passes through that can sort of query and get the information from this device. That could be a first wave which will enable citizens. The next wave would be where such sensors can be integrated in the cell phones that we carry. But that's little far in my opinion, right? Maybe 5 to 10 years down the line.
Fighting climate change is not a one-man job. The incredible contributions of these scientists in understanding and mitigating the effects of air pollution have been well recognized with some of the pioneering awards, including the prestigious Infosys Prize. In 2018, both Professor Satheesh and Professor Bhat received the Infosys Prize in recognition of their work. How does it feel to receive these awards, professors?
I would say, Infosys Prize is very special for multiple reasons. I think in the context of Indian science and technology, I think this is the highest recognition that one can get. And if you look at the people who have got this prize in the past, there's an illustrious list of people, right? To be recognized by Infosys Foundation through Infosys Prize and be part of such an illustrious group is a great feeling, really. While I have received several other awards and recognitions in the past, Infosys Prize is indeed very special in my opinion. And it's also very special because Infosys is very well known in the country today for what they have done to the information technology, not just in India, but worldwide. They're recognizing that, it is very, very important that we need to have innovation in science, which will eventually translate to technology and products. And that recognition is phenomenal. I've had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Murthy and Chris and Shibulal. They all visited our nano center in IAC. The kind of appreciation that they have for basic science, it's just amazing, right? And so I think that is why it is indeed very special. And for me, I think prizes are incidental, but although we keep saying that, we are not doing science for the sake of prizes, but I would still say that being recognized by Infosys Science Foundation is a very unique recognition.
Yeah, that is a great honor for me. I once again thank Infosys Science Foundation for presenting that great honor to me. It made a lot of differences. One thing, it is a huge honor. First of all, my words carry more weight when I talk to policymakers or other researchers. Plus, most important thing is that I am more connected to the society now. I can tell you some examples. I have received several national and international awards in the past. So Infosys Prize is the most recent one. But after I got Infosys Prize, I started getting invitations from various parts of the sectors of the society for interactions, awareness programs, training programs, and even giving some prizes to kids. My connection with society is much more now. One latest example is one tennis tournament happened in Bangalore. So the organizers, it is all India tournament. So the organizers called me to give the prize distribution to the winners. So that is, I have never done that because I don't have any connection with the tennis. So, but I have gone there. It was a good interaction. All the members of that club interacted with me and they were very keen on climate change and the effect of climate change on society. And they even invited me to deliver a popular lecture in one of the functions. And the Bangalore Science Forum, I got an invitation and several, even numerous schools across Bangalore. They wanted me to deliver lectures in there. So I feel that I am much more connected to society in this way, and I believe it is because of Infosys Prize.
Professor Ravishankara served as the jury for the Infosys Prize. He too has received his share of awards and honors, including being nominated as a fellow to the Royal Society of Chemistry. On his awards, Professor Ravi candidly remarks,
Yeah, what does it mean to me? It means to me that I was lucky to work with a lot of talented people. So it kind of makes me more obligated. And it also makes me think that I really should be doing things to help the society and not just enjoy my science. There's an obligation I feel like it comes with it. Recognition is fleeting, honestly. Think about it. How many scientists, if you stop somebody on the street in Bangalore and ask them, name 10 scientists, how many think they're going to name? And how many would they remember? They might name Einstein, they might name Raman if you happen to be from Bangalore. I don't even know how many more they would name. So what does it mean? That's not a very major factor for me. What it does do actually gives me an opportunity to speak a little bit more of what I think. Somehow a few more people might listen to me. So I don't take these awards too seriously. I'll tell you a funny story. When my wife was telling my granddaughter, she was kind of excited, something good happened or something. And she turned to me and said, Pop, does it mean you get ice cream? Okay, that put it in perspective for me. It doesn't mean anything.
The sources of air pollution are many. We have scientists, policymakers, and citizens all over the world trying to tip the balance towards conserving our planet. It's time we contributed to this effort and listened to the warning bell. This Environment Day, let's resolve to beat air pollution and take care of our earth. This is Ramya, and thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Research Matters, a SciComm initiative by Kubi Labs. For more such science news and podcasts, log on to www.researchmatters.in.